He was too poor to marry the woman he loved, until a lost, silent little girl touched his hand. What happened next turned his last coin into something no one could believe. Stay tuned because you are about to watch a beautiful story and find out what happened. Hello, family. Welcome to Tales Haven. Kindly subscribe to my YouTube channel for more interesting stories. Thank you as you do so. Sit back, relax as we dive into the story. The sky was painted with shades of orange and purple as the sun slowly disappeared behind the dusty rooftops of Monroe, a small town in North Carolina. The streets were quiet. The wind carried the scent of fried food from a nearby food truck, but Elijah didn't notice it. He sat on a lonely wooden bench outside an old, closed-down barbershop, staring into nothing. His shoulders slumped. His hands rubbed over his tired face. He hadn't eaten all day, but it wasn't hunger that weighed him down. It was the heaviness of a heart carrying too many disappointments. Elijah had always been a man with dreams, simple, honest dreams. A stable job, a quiet home, a wife to love. And that wife was supposed to be Naomi. They had dated for 4 years, through college, through early job struggles, and through days where they survived on bread and hope. She had stood by him when he lost his first job and when his small electrical repair business failed to take off. But now, everything was falling apart. 2 nights ago, Naomi had called him in tears. "My father said if you don't have a plan in 5 days, he's accepting Mr. Turner's proposal." Elijah had gone silent. Mr. Turner, a man twice his age, rich, confident, and full of promises. He owned real estate properties across the state. He drove a Tesla and had already sent expensive gifts to Naomi's family, asking for her hand. "Elijah," Naomi's voice had cracked on the phone. "You know I love you, but my father's serious. I'm scared." He remembered how his voice had trembled. "I'll find a way. I promise." But promises didn't pay rent. Promises didn't buy rings. And promises didn't make a poor man rich overnight. That evening, as Elijah sat outside the barbershop with only $5 in his wallet, doubt began whispering louder than ever. "Maybe you're not enough. Maybe she's better off without you. Maybe this love was never meant to last." He closed his eyes. And then something tugged at his shirt. He opened them slowly. Standing in front of him was a little girl, no older than 8. Her hair was tangled. Her face was dusty. She wore a faded pink dress and no shoes. Her eyes were wide and quiet, holding a kind of sadness no child should carry. She pointed to her mouth, then her stomach. Elijah frowned.
"What?"
"You're hungry." She nodded gently. "Where's your mom?" he asked. No answer. "Your dad." She looked away. Then she started making hand signs. That's when Elijah noticed it. Her mouth didn't move at all. No sound. Just signs. He blinked in shock. She's deaf," he whispered to himself. For a moment he wanted to walk away. "This isn't your problem. You already have enough trouble." But as he looked at her, tired, hungry, and alone, his heart ached. He sighed and reached into his wallet. His last $5. It was meant for tomorrow. Maybe some bread and peanut butter.
But now.
He crossed the street and bought a sandwich and a small bottle of juice from the corner store. The girl sat beside him on the bench and ate slowly, her eyes fixed on him between bites. Elijah watched her, unsure of what to feel. He didn't know her name. He didn't know where she came from. He only knew she hadn't spoken a word, and that she hadn't stopped looking at him like he was the only safe thing in her world. When she finished, he stood up and dusted off his pants. "Okay," he said softly. "You've eaten. Now go home." He turned and began walking away. He didn't get 5 steps before he felt a soft presence behind him. He turned. She was following. No, he muttered. "You can't follow me. I have my own problems. I'm trying to save my relationship. I'm broke. I have no time for." She just stared up at him. Quiet. Still. Not begging. Just trusting. It broke him a little. Elijah sighed and walked faster. But she followed. He walked in circles.
She followed.
He stopped in a park, pretending to rest on a bench, thinking maybe she would grow tired and leave. But she sat beside him. folded her small arms, and stayed. It was getting late. The street lights flickered on. A cold wind blew. And still she stayed. Elijah looked down at her again. And for the first time in his life, he felt rich. Not with money. Not with success. But with purpose. Maybe he couldn't buy Naomi a wedding dress yet. Maybe he couldn't rent an apartment or throw a big ceremony. But right now, he could protect this little girl. And somehow, deep inside, he knew. Helping her would change everything. Elijah stood up slowly from the park bench, brushing dirt from his pants. He looked down at the little girl still sitting beside him. She blinked up at him, hugging herself as the evening breeze grew colder.
She didn't speak.
She didn't cry. She just waited, like she had nowhere to go. Elijah looked around the park. It was nearly empty. A few people walked their dogs or jogged past, but no one seemed to notice her. No one seemed to be missing a child. All right, Elijah sighed. Let's try to find someone. The girl followed as he began walking again, this time toward the nearest police station, which was a few blocks away. His steps were slow and heavy, not just because of how tired he felt, but because of the weight of the unknown. The police station was quiet when he arrived. A middle-aged officer behind the desk looked up and gave Elijah a curious stare. "Can I help you, sir?" Elijah gestured behind him. The little girl peeked out from behind his leg. "I found her.
She's lost.
She's deaf, and she hasn't said a word. I don't think she knows where she is." The officer stood and walked around the counter, crouching gently in front of her. "Hey there, sweetheart. Can you tell me your name?" She simply tilted her head. "She's been using her hands to speak," Elijah explained. "Like sign language. But I don't understand it." The officer nodded. "We get situations like this sometimes." "No ID on her." "Nothing," Elijah said. "Not even shoes." The officer stood again, his expression thoughtful.
"All right.
I'll write a report. But without a name or a matching missing child alert, there's not much we can do tonight. Would you be able to keep her until we get a lead?" Elijah looked shocked. "Me?"
Yes.
"We could contact child services, but sometimes it's better if they stay with someone kind for the night. And it seems she trusts you." He looked down at her again. She was still holding the empty juice bottle he had given her earlier. She clutched it like it was something precious. Elijah nodded slowly. "Okay, I'll take her." "Write down your contact details," the officer said. "If we hear anything, we'll reach out." It was dark by the time they got back to Elijah's tiny one-room apartment. He unlocked the creaky door, stepped inside, and flicked on the light. The walls were bare. Just a mattress in the corner, a cracked mirror, and a small table with 2 chairs that didn't match. He looked around, embarrassed. "Sorry, it's not much." The girl stepped inside, holding tightly to her small bottle. Elijah opened a box and pulled out a clean towel. "You need a bath," he said softly. "Come on." He poured warm water into a plastic basin and gently helped her wash up. She didn't fight. She just stood still, letting him rinse her arms and wipe the dirt from her face. She smelled faintly of dust and sadness. He gave her one of his old shirts to sleep in. It reached down to her knees. Afterward, she lay down on the mattress with her head against a pillow. Elijah placed a second pillow and a blanket on the floor for himself. "Good night," he whispered, turning off the light. But before he could lie down, a tiny hand reached out in the dark and touched his arm. He looked over. The girl pointed to her chest, then slowly used her fingers to sign something in the air. He sat up. "What's that mean?" She repeated it. He didn't understand. So she reached for his notebook on the table and took the pen. With careful strokes, she wrote, "L0ST." He read it aloud. "Lyric." She nodded, smiling gently. "Elijah," he said, pointing to himself. "My name is Elijah." Lyric tried to say it with her lips, slowly. "Elijah." Her mouth moved, but no sound came. Tears filled Elijah's eyes. She couldn't speak, but somehow he heard her. The next morning, Elijah woke up to a message from Naomi. "Did you find a solution? My father is calling someone this weekend to finalize the Turner proposal. I need answers, Elijah." He stared at the message, heart pounding. He sat up and looked at Lyric, still fast asleep, her small frame curled on the mattress. He couldn't explain it, but something in him refused to let her go. He texted back, "I'm trying, Naomi. I promise." But something happened. "I'll tell you soon." By noon, Elijah and Lyric were back on the streets, walking from one area to another, searching. They visited grocery stores, train stations, schools, and 3 local malls, showing her face to staff, customers, guards. But every time, the answer was the same. "No, we haven't seen her." No missing report matches. No clue. Every few hours, Elijah bought her something small, a biscuit, a juice box, using the few coins he found between couch cushions and in old jeans. He was broke, but somehow not empty. Even when his feet hurt and his back ached, he didn't give up. Lyric walked beside him, without complaint. She didn't cry, she didn't get angry. She just stayed. Sometimes, she would slip her hand into his quietly. And when she did, Elijah felt like someone was telling him, "Keep going. You're not alone." By nightfall, they had found nothing. As they sat on the sidewalk outside a closed pharmacy, Elijah leaned back and looked at the stars. "I don't even know why I'm doing this," he whispered. Lyric looked up too, then reached into her pocket and pulled out a wrinkled piece of paper. She unfolded it slowly and handed it to him. It was a child's drawing, messy and simple. It showed 2 people, a man and a girl, holding hands and smiling. Elijah stared at it for a long time. His chest tightened. He looked at Lyric and smiled. Because maybe, just maybe, this was the beginning of something bigger than either of them understood. The next morning, Elijah sat quietly on the wooden floor of his small apartment, staring at the wrinkled drawing Lyric had given him the night before. 2 figures.
A man.
A little girl. Holding hands. Smiling. He smiled back at the drawing like it could answer all the questions in his heart. Behind him, Lyric was brushing her teeth in the tiny bathroom. She had no toothbrush of her own, so Elijah had cut his in half and let her use the top part. She didn't complain.
She didn't speak.
She simply obeyed. There was something deep about her silence. Not sad. Not broken. Just quiet strength. Elijah's phone buzzed. It was Naomi. "Naomi, are you free to talk now? I'm coming over." He replied quickly. "Elijah, yes. Please come." An hour later, Naomi stepped into his small apartment and closed the door behind her gently. She wore a simple blue blouse and dark jeans, her hair pulled back in a ponytail. She looked beautiful, but tired. Her eyes quickly found Lyric, who was now sitting at the edge of the mattress, hugging a teddy bear Elijah had found in an old box. "She's really quiet," Naomi said softly. "She's deaf," Elijah replied. "But not dumb. She signs. Writes too." Naomi sat beside the girl. "Hi, Lyric." Lyric smiled and nodded politely. There was a brief silence. Then Naomi turned to Elijah. "You look worn out." "I feel like it," he said with a half laugh. "Have you eaten?" He shook his head. Naomi sighed and opened the small bag she brought with her. She handed Elijah a sandwich and juice.
"Eat.
You need energy." He took it without a word, deeply touched. For a moment, it felt like nothing had changed between them. But then Naomi's tone shifted. "Elijah, my father's still serious. He said if there's no proper plan by tomorrow evening, he's finalizing with Mr. Turner." Elijah's heart dropped. "Naomi, I'm trying," he whispered. "I know. But you also haven't even told me why you're trying to help this girl so much. What if her parents never show up? What if she was abandoned?" He shook his head. "She wasn't abandoned. I can feel it. She's not scared. She trusts me. Naomi, I can't just drop her." Naomi was quiet. Then she said gently, "I'm not asking you to drop her. I'm asking you not to drop me." Her voice cracked slightly. "I've fought for us for years, Elijah. When no one believed in you, I did. When my friends mocked me, I stayed. But now, I need to know that I matter too." Elijah reached for her hand. "You matter, Naomi. More than anything. I just believe if I follow this path and help Lyric find her family, maybe that's where our breakthrough will come from. Naomi blinked back tears, then slowly nodded. Okay, then let me help too. That afternoon, the three of them moved together, Naomi, Elijah, and Lyric, like an unlikely little family. Naomi posted Lyric's picture on social media. She wrote, "This little girl was found wandering near East Point. She's deaf, about 8 years old, very calm and sweet. We believe she's lost and needs help finding her family. Please share." The post began to gain attention. They visited children's centers, shelters, and schools. But no one recognized her. Elijah checked with 3 more police stations and the bus terminal. Still nothing. They were exhausted. At one point, they stopped near a convenience store to rest. Elijah sat on the curb, his elbows on his knees. Naomi stood beside him, sipping water. Lyric, as always, sat close to Elijah, head resting on his side. Naomi watched the two of them. "How is it," she said quietly, "that she feels safer with you than anyone else?" Elijah didn't know how to answer. He just looked at Lyric's face. "I think," he said slowly, "she sees pain in me that she understands." Later that evening, as the sky began to fade, Naomi's phone rang. She answered quickly. "Hello." A woman's voice replied, "Hi, I saw your post about the little girl. I work at the Deaf Children's Outreach Center. I don't know her, but I recognized one of the signs she used in the video. It's not American Sign Language. It's a special gesture from a teaching program used in Charlotte 2 years ago." Naomi gasped. "So she might be from Charlotte?"
Yes.
"There's a school that used that system with a few children. Maybe try the Hillside Mall area. There were cases where children visited and got separated." Naomi hung up and turned to Elijah. "She might be from Charlotte. A mall there. Hillside." Elijah stood up quickly. "Then we go. Tomorrow morning." That night, back at home, Elijah lay on the floor again while Lyric slept on the mattress. He stared at the ceiling. Naomi lay on the mattress beside Lyric, softly stroking the girl's hair. There was peace. Not comfort. Not success.
But peace.
Elijah whispered into the dark. "God, I have nothing. But please let this lead us home." The next morning came quietly, but something in Elijah's heart stirred louder than any alarm clock. He woke before sunrise. Lyric was still asleep, her tiny hands curled under her cheek. Naomi had dozed off beside her, arms wrapped around the girl protectively. Elijah rose, walked to the window, and stared outside. Today felt different. Not perfect, not easy, but possible. They packed quickly. Naomi made toast with the last slices of bread while Elijah poured water into 2 small bottles. They dressed Lyric warmly, tying her hair into a small ponytail with Naomi's scarf. By 8 a.m., they were on the first bus to Charlotte. The ride to Hillside Mall was long and quiet. Naomi held Elijah's hand most of the way, occasionally glancing down at Lyric, who sat in the window seat tracing her finger on the fogged glass. "Do you think we'll find them today?" Naomi asked softly. Elijah looked at Lyric, who had just drawn a little sun on the window. "I don't know," he whispered, "but I think she believes we will." By mid-morning, they arrived at the wide glass doors of Hillside Mall. It was large, colorful, and already buzzing with people. Children laughed as they ran toward toy stores. Mothers pushed strollers. Teenagers browsed food courts. But Elijah's focus was only on Lyric. She stood still at the entrance. Her eyes scanned the space. Then slowly, she reached for Elijah's hand, tight, trembling, and took a deep breath. She stepped in. For the next 2 hours, they went from shop to shop, kiosk to kiosk, asking the same questions. "Have you seen this little girl before? Do you remember anyone looking for her? Did anyone report a missing deaf child?" Some employees were kind. Others were too busy. Most simply said, "Sorry, no." Naomi's feet were starting to ache. Elijah's stomach growled, but he ignored it. Lyric stayed strong until they passed a small jewelry shop with a pink sign that read Bella's Boutique. She stopped, stared at the door, and didn't move. Elijah crouched beside her. "What is it?"
She didn't speak.
But her hands moved fast, signing words he didn't understand. Wait, Naomi said. That's the sign. That's the same one the woman told us about, the Charlotte program. They rushed inside the store. Behind the counter stood a kind-looking woman in her late 30s, arranging some earrings. She looked up. Hello, can I help? Her face froze when she saw Lyric. Wait a minute. Elijah stepped forward. Do you recognize her? The woman walked slowly around the counter and knelt in front of Lyric. Sweetheart, do you remember me? She signed. Lyric nodded slowly. Her eyes began to water. Oh my God, the woman whispered. Yes, yes, I know this child. She was here last week with her parents. It was packed. There was a crowd. I saw her walking behind them one moment, and then she was gone. Elijah's heart thumped. Do you know their names? The woman ran to the desk and grabbed a clipboard. They filled out a raffle entry that day. Let me check. She flipped through papers quickly, then gasped. Here. Carson family. Charles and Evelyn Carson. I remember now, they were panicking. They filed a missing child report. I think they even stayed in town for days hoping someone would find her. She picked up the store phone. I'm calling them now. 10 minutes later, Elijah's phone rang. A number he didn't recognize. He answered. Hello. Is this Elijah Morgan? A deep voice replied, filled with urgency and shaky breath.
Yes.
Who is this? This is Charles Carson. You found our daughter? Yes, sir. She's here. She's safe. Silence. Then a woman screamed in the background, not out of fear, but from relief. Oh my God. Evelyn, she's here, she's alive. Elijah's own voice began to shake. We've been trying for days. She didn't speak, and we couldn't find anything. We're on our way, Charles said. Please don't move. Please. 30 minutes later, a black SUV pulled into the mall parking lot like lightning. The doors burst open. A woman in a long coat and heels ran out, sobbing loudly. Lyric. Lyric's head shot up. Her eyes widened. She stood frozen. Then she ran. Faster than she ever had. Straight into her mother's arms. Evelyn fell to her knees, grabbing Lyric tightly, kissing her forehead, holding her like she would never let go again. Charles knelt beside them, tears streaming down his cheeks as he pulled them both into a hug. My baby girl, thank you, God, he whispered over and over. Naomi turned away, wiping her eyes. Elijah just stood there, unable to speak, his chest burning with quiet emotion. Then Charles stood up and walked straight to Elijah. He didn't say a word. He just hugged him. Hard. You fed her, kept her warm, kept her safe. I didn't do much, Elijah said, voice shaking. Charles stepped back. You did everything. You did what even the system couldn't. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a folded check. This is nothing compared to what you gave us. But please, take it. Elijah unfolded the check and nearly dropped it. $50,000. He stared, mouth open, hands trembling. I can't. You will, Charles said firmly. You earned this. You changed our lives. Naomi touched his arm. He turned. She was already crying. Elijah, she whispered, we can get married. He nodded, eyes full of tears.
Yes.
We can. And for the first time in his life, Elijah didn't feel poor. He felt rich. Not just in money, but in meaning. The air outside the mall was calm. The sun had started to set, painting soft gold across the pavement where Elijah stood frozen, holding the $50,000 check in his shaking hands. Naomi wrapped her arms around him from behind and leaned her head gently on his shoulder. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. Their silence was full of meaning, hope, healing, and the quiet kind of joy that only comes after surviving a storm. A few feet away, Lyric sat in her father's arms, resting her head on his shoulder. Her mother stood next to them, stroking her back and smiling through steady tears. Charles Carson walked back to Elijah and gave him a small business card. My wife and I own several electronics companies across North Carolina, he said. We've been planning to expand our service centers, especially the ones that offer training for young men in the community. Elijah listened quietly, still in shock. "We need someone like you," Charles continued. "Someone honest. Someone kind. Someone who leads with heart." He smiled. "The position is yours if you want it.
Full-time.
With a company car. And a future." Elijah blinked, his voice low. "Why are you doing all this?" Charles looked toward his daughter. "Because you didn't just help Lyric. You helped me believe that there are still good men in this world." 2 weeks later, Elijah stood in front of a small rented chapel. He wore a clean black suit, one he had picked himself and paid for with his own card. He looked in the mirror and barely recognized the man staring back. Beside him stood Charles, now his best man. Inside the chapel, Naomi walked down the aisle wearing a simple but beautiful cream dress. Her eyes sparkled with love and pride. Elijah's heart thumped as she approached. He hadn't planned a big wedding, but it turned out love didn't need one. As they held hands and faced the pastor, Lyric sat in the front row in a white dress, clapping her hands softly, joy lighting up her quiet little world. Naomi smiled at her, and Lyric, in her own way, smiled back. During the vows, Elijah turned to Naomi with tears in his eyes. "There was a day not long ago," he said, "when I sat on a bench with nothing but a broken heart and $5 in my wallet. I thought I had lost everything. I thought I had nothing to offer you, Naomi. Not a ring, not a future, not even a meal." He paused, his voice shaking. "But then, a little girl with no shoes, no words, and no idea who I was, reached out her hand. And that moment changed everything." Naomi wept quietly. Elijah continued, "Because helping her helped me discover who I really was. And when I had nothing left, that's when I learned I was never empty. I just hadn't been poured out yet." The entire chapel was silent. Some wiped their eyes. Some sobbed quietly. And as the pastor finally said, "You may now kiss the bride," Elijah and Naomi sealed a promise born from pain, patience, and pure love. After the wedding, Elijah began his new job as a technical lead for Carson Services. He worked hard, led training programs for young men, and was soon promoted to regional coordinator. Naomi went back to school to finish her degree in child psychology, inspired by Lyric's quiet strength. They bought a modest home, built it together, brick by brick, prayer by prayer. And every year, on the same date Elijah had given away his last $5, they celebrated something they called the Day of the Last Coin. Every year, Elijah would visit a local park and stand before a group of young people, teenagers, dreamers, struggling parents, and tell the story. There was once a man who had only $5 to his name. He was poor, broken, and ready to give up on love. But then a lost little girl touched his hand, not with words, but with trust. He could have walked away, but instead, he spent his last coin feeding a child that wasn't his. And in that act of kindness, he found his own miracle. You see, life doesn't always reward strength. Sometimes it rewards kindness. When you give from your little, you invite a blessing bigger than you. So never think you're too poor to make a difference. Sometimes the very door you're looking for opens when you hold it open for someone else. And as he finished the story, Naomi would join him at the front, sometimes with Lyric, sometimes with their own kids. And together, they'd remind the world, one small act of love can change everything. That brings us to the end of this video. If you find this story worth watching, kindly subscribe to my YouTube channel for more beautiful stories, like, and share this video to your friends and loved ones. Your support and engagement encourage me to post more videos. Thanks for watching.